Well, Emma, thank you so much for being with us here on the YouTube channel, here with our community. And as we get started, I'm just going to say a few things that I said last time when we did our first interview. But this is just a conversation between the two of us. So anyone in the community who's listening, this is not therapy. Emma is not my therapy client. So I don't have my therapist hat on. It's in the closet, and I just have my human hat on for this conversation. Um, so yeah, I mean, the main kind of purpose of these conversations is to highlight your story, Emma, and to let people in our community know that there's hope for their future to be better and that they're not alone.
Yeah.
So it might be helpful for the community to just hear like how you and I know each other. If you feel comfortable sharing that.
I actually don't remember what class it was, but I took a lot of classes. You were my professor at Vanguard. I honestly, I think probably maybe 3 classes, 4 classes. I took a lot of classes with you.
Yeah,
I
you're a guest speaker for an abnormal, though.
Yeah, abnormal. That's right. Yeah, so I ended up becoming a guest speaker for a couple of years. I think like 2 or 3 years. I would every semester would speak in your class, and I love doing it. And thank goodness you still had my email because we haven't talked in so long. But yeah, from Vanguard, that's how we met.
Yeah, totally. And I felt really honored. Like, first off, you were so courageous as a student, because I remember in abnormal psychology, it's customary in that class that professors have guest speakers who come in and share their own story. You approached me about that and very courageously were like, hey, if you ever need a guest speaker, feel free to ask me. And I was like, oh, wow, like, that's amazing. That's so brave, And then I felt really honored because as the semesters went on, like, I got to see how your story was evolving and the transformation that was happening in your life.
Yeah.
So
I think
really amazing.
I think I just felt like no one like around me knew anything about like what my history was, and no one really asked. I don't think it was a common thing for people to really talk about that in college. Like I think, abnormal psychology was the only place that people got to hear about like real life stories, and a lot of college students never got to like experience that or like hear people's stories. So I was like, if I can share it to my peers, then why not?
I love that. I love that about
Yeah.
you. And that actually was the question I had as I was thinking about you. I was like, what motivated you to share your story in that?
I truly think it was just like I felt like I was so alone and that no one like knew what I was experiencing, and college was really hard, and I don't feel like anyone really like was there for me specifically, like because everyone was just so like in their college world, and it didn't feel like there was a large support group surrounding mental health at all. And so I think I just wanted to maybe start some kind of like people being okay with talking about their journeys and where they came from, and like yeah, I have a history, but I'm still Emma and I'm still here. So I think I don't know, I think it just was wanting to like have more people talk about it. I don't know what it, because I was normally really shy. So the fact that I was like, yeah, let's do it was so weird because I am not a very social person until I got to like college. I became a little more social.
Okay, I did not realize you're a shy person, and I never would have guessed that, given how just how bold and how brave you were about sharing your story.
Growing up, I was the most shy person. People couldn't get 2 words out of me. I don't know what it was about college that made me become more extroverted. Now, I think also like with the field that I like went into, like I have to be social, and so it's 2 different worlds of like what I grew up acting like versus now being super extroverted.
Yeah, it's funny how life kind of opens doors for us to force us to kind of get in a different mode of ourselves, right? And grow in a different way.
So different. People would never say I was an extrovert growing up.
Well, I mean, in terms of helping people understand kind of, you mentioned having a history, we've been talking about your story and everything you've gone through. Where should we start just in terms of unpacking some of that? Like, would it be college? Would it be high school? Before that?
Maybe like middle school is where it really started. I was homeschooled for middle school. So I was home in my really unsafe house environment. 24/7. I never really got out of it. My dad was abusive towards my mom. So I got to see the things that my sisters didn't get to experience. So I think that's really where my anxiety started, because I would often like come into the middle of the arguments and just try to like, be the middle person. And that middleman job is really, I think, where everything began of needing to have control. And so from that, it really just spiraled into anxious, depression, like all of the above. And then I think my high school years is where the eating disorder started. And that really was just trying to find control. I didn't have control in my house. I didn't have control at school. And so I leaned on controlling what I ate. So I think that's really where it started, was just being in an unsafe environment and not having anyone or any place to go that made me feel safe.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, safety is just, it's a basic need for us as people,
Yeah.
right? And when we don't have that safety, when we feel alone, when we are experiencing abuse, witnessing abuse, being caught in the middle of it as a middleman, like you said, where do we go, right? And
Yeah.
we have to find some other option. And I think sometimes when people think about eating disorders, they don't always realize this connection with control. You're very self-aware. You immediately see the connection, but
Yeah.
and for people who might be watching this in our community, can you kind of help us understand what's the connection between control and developing an eating disorder, at least in your experience?
I think in my experience, I couldn't control quite literally anything around me. And so I found that I can control the portions of food that I ate. It gave me the sense of control that I needed. And so if I could eat like 5 goldfish the entire day, that's what I ate. Like, it was about being able to have some form of control over what I could. And I didn't have control over the environment around me. I didn't have control around, the chaos in my house. And so I looked towards the one thing that was close to me, and that was food. On top of that, it was also, I would get really negative comments from my dad about how I needed to be better for tennis and how I needed to lose weight and be on a diet. So I think those two things combined, it was just a disaster of like leading towards like where I was headed. But it really was just that fact that I couldn't control anything else. And so if I can control how much I ate, then there was a little bit of something that I needed. I needed some kind of sense of control to feel safe. And that was food for me. But that obviously did not lead down a super great path. I think my senior year is when I went to the eating disorder program. My mom started to realize I was losing a lot of weight and it was not normal. The doctors were like, "Oh, you're really skinny." And so they sent me to a facility where I did get help for 4 months. I was there, and it was helpful. I mean, everything about it, like, I was able to feel safe again, and with food specifically, I was able to eat foods that I was like, this doesn't seem safe to me, because that seems like it's far out of my control. I don't want to eat that. But yeah, so I know I jumped forward quite a bit, but that eating disorder program, I think, made me feel like I wasn't the only one experiencing that. There was so many other teenagers in that group too that were experiencing the same thing, who also had chaos at their house, who also felt like they needed to control their food. And so that place made me feel like it was okay. Like I wasn't the only one in the world experiencing that.
Wow. So that was powerful to know that you weren't the only one and that there were other
Yeah.
teens going through that.
Yeah.
And okay, so when everything around us and in our life feels chaotic and is unsafe, sometimes we can try to control by controlling the only thing that's controllable, like food, or literally like what's going in our mouth, what's going in our body.
Yeah.
Like you said, that led you down a really dark path into an eating disorder. It sounds like your doctors were the ones who noticed that you were losing too
Yeah,
much
I
weight.
think my mom might have taken me to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician was like, this doesn't seem right, and then recommended. I think it definitely was my mom who like noticed it first, but the pediatricians were the ones that like kind of pushed it and were like sent the referral over. But I pushed it off for like a couple of months because it was my senior year. I was like, I'm fine, I'm good. But they somehow got me back because it wasn't my choice. I was 17 years old, so it was my parents' choice to have to send me. So
So this was senior year of high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And senior year, like such a formative, like celebratory, like
Yeah.
important year of our high school lives. And I did want to ask you about that piece of like, were you just like, yes, I'm ready to go into treatment? Because that wasn't my memory of how
Yeah.
that happened. So can you
No.
tell us a little bit about like, okay, the doctors recommended it, and then you didn't want to go? Like, what was that process like of actually like
Yeah.
going?
I think I went in for an evaluation at the facility and they were like, yeah, she needs to come in. And no one really told me like what it was going to look like. So I didn't really know like what the whole experience was going to be. And I was like, well, I'm still playing tennis and I would like to finish my tennis season. And they were like, okay, I guess that's fair, whatever. Like, I think they wanted me to come in sooner, but I was very adamant that I was finishing my tennis season. Um, but I don't think I really didn't see a purpose. My dad didn't even agree. Like, he was like, she's fine. Like, she just needs to eat more food. Um, so it must have been my mom that really pushed for it because I think both him and I were like, I'm fine. Like, I just can eat more food and I'll be good. And I was like, there's just foods I don't like, and that's normal because I was just a picky eater. Um, so I was not excited to go. I think it was just the push of my mom that was like, you have to go. But I didn't see a problem. I thought it was fine until I went there. And after a couple months, I thought I was going to be in and out in like a couple weeks. But that was not the case. They know better than you, and they were like, it took a while for me to accept it. And I think once I finally accepted the fact that like I needed help and I needed someone, to show me the proper ways of getting back to what I used to be, and that's when I was like, okay, I can, be here for a little while and get the help that I need to leave the facility. So yeah, I was not stoked to go. I didn't think I had a problem. I thought it was fine.
Sure. Yeah. We all need our protections, right? We all need our defenses. And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, like that was helping you at the time to just tell yourself that you're fine and there's no problem, right? And one of the things I find interesting in your story is like, it kind of sounds like you were getting help for a few months before you realized you needed help.
Yeah. I was in therapy. I was in therapy and seeing a psychiatrist for medication. Honestly, probably for 2 years beforehand. So I was getting therapy, but I don't think it was like the therapy I needed for my eating disorder. Like I don't think I even talked to them about my eating habits, actually. I really kept that under wraps. I would talk to them about other things, but not about eating at all. So I was getting help, but I don't think it was the help I needed at the time for what I was experiencing. But, yeah.
Was your eating disorder like kind of a secret from your therapist and psychiatrist, or was it just you weren't aware, so you weren't talking about your eating?
I think it was that I wasn't aware. I don't think I thought I had a problem. I just was like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like I'm still eating food. And I think in my mind I thought anorexia was like completely not eating at all ever. And I was like, I still eat, but I just wasn't eating the appropriate amount to keep my body up, like to keep up with my nutrients that I needed. So it wasn't that I was starving myself. Like starving yourself isn't the same. Like it can be anorexia, of course, but like that was in my case. But I think in my mind, that's what I thought it was. It was just that's what it is. Everyone who has anorexia is what is starving themselves. So I didn't think I even knew that it could just be what I was doing, where I was controlling my food and not starving myself, but I was controlling my food to a point where I wasn't eating as much as I should have. So I don't think my therapist even like thought about it because I didn't think there's a problem.
Sure. Yeah, and it's like it is a really, really difficult thing in therapy and outside of therapy, because we know so many people, regardless of their gender, actually have issues with their own body, have issues with disordered eating. Like, unfortunately, it's very common. So at what point do we say someone has an eating disorder versus some disorder, or, concerning eating? It's difficult to distinguish. But I hear what you're saying. Like you didn't see it as a problem, so why would you be talking about that in therapy or with your psychiatrist?
Yeah. And there was so many other problems going at home. I was like, I'd rather talk about those things than something that I don't think is a problem, that I didn't think was a problem at the time.
Yeah. And as you said, like these things were all interconnected, right? Because what was happening at home was probably the impetus for your eating disorder, right? Like it kind of grew
Yeah.
out of that as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Totally.
yeah. So I mean, once you got into this program, it sounds like a residential or inpatient program.
Yeah. It was inpatient residential.
So for people who don't know what that means, it's a program where you're basically like living there for a few months, right? Like it's not
Correct.
like you home to sleep at night.
Yeah.
You have a place where you're staying, and you stay there with other teenagers
Yeah.
overnight, and you stay there for months, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, they would weigh us every single day. We would have a nutritionist who would put our meals together. We all sat together at like a table and would eat meals every single day, every single meal we had together. We would have family nights where there'd be like family therapy and family dinners. It really did feel like a family. Like I think they wanted it to feel as family as possible with, the other patients. Like you're not eating alone. You have people around you who are there to support you. Um, Lots of therapy groups. I mean, I think the whole day was centered around therapy groups, art therapy, music therapy, literally any therapy you can think of was there.
Mhm.
Um, I think you just like also grow close to the people that are there because you see them all day long, and so it just you become close to people that like you realize are going through similar struggles. Um, but yeah, it was a lot at the time. I think I was very overwhelmed because I was like, what is going on? Like this is not, I just came from my house and now I'm here, and it's like a total different structure of like you couldn't wear tight clothing, you couldn't have blankets on. Like it was, they really wanted to focus on like, seeing yourself in a better light and being more positive about your body. So it was a very difficult thing to go through at the time. But now looking back, it's like if I wouldn't have gone through that, I don't know that I would have gotten better. um, but a very structured program. It was a very well run program of, trying to help people to get better and to get out of this slump, because eating disorders are a very common relapse rate. It's a very normal thing for people to go back to that and to end up back at the same place. So I think, at least in my experience, the way that they had it structured was beneficial for me, and I've been able to maintain like not having to go back to that. So yeah.
I'm so grateful to hear that, and I'm so grateful that you're able to go into that program and get
Yeah.
at least some of the help that you needed at that
Yeah.
time. I was watching a video online in the past couple of days, and it was a psychiatrist who was saying, "What do you think the most life-threatening mental health condition is?" And I'm listening to this as a psychologist, and I was thinking, okay, like depression, we have suicide, bipolar disorder, suicide. And she was saying, no, it's not depression. No, it's not bipolar disorder. It's actually anorexia.
Yeah.
As people, when they don't get the help that they need,
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but they will literally starve themselves to death. So that just makes me so extremely grateful that you were able to be in that program.
Yeah, there were a lot of people in the program who had already been through it. So seeing that, I was like, I'm not coming back here. And especially, I was going to turn 18. So really, I'm not coming back here because it will be my choice to come back here. And so I think even more so, I was just really motivated to just see like the benefits of like getting out. I was like, okay, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I see it, like it's within reach. I just need to work on myself and, be able to find resources that can help me when I'm feeling like I need control. So definitely saw the people that were there frequently. I was like, no, that will not be me. I'm very stubborn.
So that, like seeing that people had revisited the program and come back into the
Yeah.
program, ironically, it motivated you to like never have to come back,
Yeah.
basically.
Like that. It will not ever be me. I hope it will not be me. And I
Yeah.
think also like being a senior, I was like, well, college is coming up. Like I want to go to college. I want to leave the house and go somewhere where it's not so chaotic. I mean, it was 18 years of chaos. And so I was looking forward to finally having like a place where I felt like I was safe. And so I was like, that's even more motivation for me to like be done with this program, get out of the house and start my own independent life without, what I grew up with. So that was a lot. That was a big motivator for me because I was like, I don't want to stay here.
Yeah. Okay. So what was that transition like for you? Like, I assume you eventually left the program. I happen to know you eventually started college because that's where I met you. But I mean,
Yeah.
what was that kind of phase of your life like, that transition into college?
It felt really chaotic to be independent, like not even 4 months after getting out of a facility like that. Looking
Mhm.
back, I don't know if that was a smart decision to make, was just to go straight to college right after that. Because I just felt like I still needed so much more. Luckily, Vanguard had a really great therapy program, a counseling program. So I did get into that immediately when I got there. Um, and I got like disability services. I had accommodations with for testing and all that sort of thing. So I do think that was the good thing about it, is that I knew what I needed and I advocated for myself when I did go to college. Um, but it was a lot just to like go from, a place where I was so down and I felt like there was nothing left for me, and to be like, okay, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna figure it out on my own. um it was difficult, and my little sister was still at home, and so I still contacted my family all the time. Like, it wasn't like I went no contact with them, because that's not like, I'm not that kind of person just to like leave and say goodbye. As much as anyone else on the outside would have been like, that would have been the smart thing to do. I still to this day have not done that. Um so it going from that transition of like being so reliant on people in a program to like make me eat my food, to like, okay, now it's on you to choose what you want to do and make the right decisions for your body and your health and your, the rest of your future. So it was a big change. It wasn't like anyone was telling me to sit down and eat my food anymore. It was like, okay, it really tested. Was that my cat that just opened the door? I think my cat just opened the door. It really tested like everything. Oh, yep, there she is.
She's
It
welcome to
really
join us.
tested. I know. Here she is. This is Allie. She's from the rescue.
Hi, Allie.
I don't know. You probably remember Milo. Milo's with my dad now, so he has
Oh,
a good
okay.
place. Yeah, he's doing his job in Ohio, so that's great. It's been really helpful for my dad. Anyways, um, yeah,
But yeah,
I
that's
think just,
a really steep learning curve and a really
yeah,
steep transition of being in that program, having so much structure and help, and then into college, like so much independence. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't like we were all sitting at a community table eating together, and like, you have to make friends, and no one's there to like tell you which portions of food to eat. And so I think just it really was a good test of like, are you capable of doing this? Like, your mom and dad aren't here to keep up and maintain what the program set in place. So, and I think in the beginning it was like tough, but I think it showed me that I was capable of doing it. And I was like, if I'm capable of doing this independently, I can do this forever, because I'm doing this by myself right now. And I mean, luckily, like, I took what I learned at the program of, just knowing that like my body needs nutrients to survive. It needs nutrients to keep running. And if I don't give it nutrients, then it's not going to function the way it's supposed to. And that was the biggest thing I reminded myself of in college, was just like, look, if you want to keep going, if you want to keep going to class, if you want to keep exercising, if you want to, go out with your friends, you need to eat the proper nutrients so that you're able to keep up with all those. I think that was the biggest thing, was just reminding myself of that. Is like, I'm eating to survive. I'm not like eating food just for fun. Like, it's my body needs it. Like, I have to eat food to survive. That's Everyone in the world has to eat food.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's healthy for us to do so.
Yeah.
And needed to survive. And some people might even say it's enjoyable to eat food, but
Yeah. Now
I
I
know
do.
that's,
I love food.
oh, you do? Look at that.
Man,
That's a profound mindset change.
listen, when you move to South Carolina and all they have is fried chicken here, the food here is like so greasy. It's the best thing in the world. I've never had, I mean, the Mexican food is lacking over here, let me tell you. I will I will always miss California Mexican food. But everything else is pretty good.
Amazing. I'm glad that you've gotten that shift of like now you enjoy the food. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned about your transition into college. I'm just going to pick one piece out, but it kind of stuck out to me because of um, some of the students that I've been talking to lately, inside of therapy and in our community here online. Sometimes people either don't want to go to disability services,
Mm.
or they go to disability services, they have accommodations on paper, and they don't want to talk to their professors about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say to those people?
I think I also in the beginning didn't want to go to disability services because I felt like, what are they going to do for me? I don't have a disability. It, I don't. It also like they don't really make it clear like what options they can provide for you. I think. I mean, at least in the beginning, I didn't know what my options were, and so I think that was the biggest thing to get over is like, if I go there, am I going to embarrass myself because I'm asking for accommodations for mental illness? Um, but I think people fail to realize that like mental illness is a really debilitating thing, and if there are ways to help you and to facilitate your learning better, oh my gosh, the cat, then like utilize that and utilize it to your benefit. And I think it took me a year to go to disability services. I didn't go my freshman year, and so I think I was struggling like grade wise. I testing was really difficult for me. I felt like super anxious when taking tests, and when I finally like made the decision to go, it was life changing. I think my grades drastically improved. I mean, I turned to like like A's and B's, which was not my experience growing up. I was always a C, D kind of person. So like the fact that I was able to use those accommodations to my benefit, and it shouldn't be an embarrassing thing, but I think to some people it is. And so I think for talking to professors, it's the fear of like, are they going to see me differently because I'm not as capable as the students who don't have accommodations? Or are they going to, judge me because I'm not, the students that don't have those? But I think it maybe just gives your professors a better insight of to what to expect from you as a student and like what you need as a student. Um, I think once I told professors, I think they became more understanding and more aware of like if I needed to leave class for a panic attack, they were so aware and so accepting of that, which I was so grateful for because there were a couple times I just stepped out and to professors that might look rude or disrespectful. And so if they were aware of the fact that I needed to leave for that reason, I knew that I wasn't looking disrespectful in their eyes because they knew that I was going through something. Um, so I think just reminding yourself that like professors want to know what's going on and need to know how to best help you learn and what kind of environment you're best capable of learning in. But it was hard. It was hard to speak up and ask for the things that I needed. But like I said, I turned into a better student when I was able to ask for help. So
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you did ask for help and let
yeah.
people know.
Yeah.
In case it's helpful for anyone in our community to hear this, like from my perspective as a former professor, I was a professor for about 10 years, psychology professor, but professors benefit from having context about you as a student because it helps them understand what they're seeing in class, right? So like Emma said, like, if you just run out of class, we don't know if like you hate what we just said. We don't know if you're having a bathroom emergency. We don't know if there was an earthquake and you're the only one who felt it. We don't know if you're just like FaceTiming your boyfriend. Like we have no idea what's going on. And so it leaves our mind open to just interpreting things weirdly. But if we have context on paper that you're going through something and that there's something practical we can do to help you, it's really, really helpful. And, I can't speak for all professors, but I wanted my students to be successful, right? And at least from my perspective, different students need different support in order to shine and just show their potential. And so if a student shows me their accommodations, it's typically not difficult for me as a professor to be like, oh yeah, like you can take your tests at the disability center, or yeah, it's fine if you have someone who takes notes for you in class, or yes, it's fine if you audio record the lecture. Those are not difficult things, at least for me, as a professor to do those. So I would encourage anyone to at least check out their disability center on campus. It has a different name on different campuses. And like Emma said, like you said, Emma, like, you have to kind of decode like what services they can offer you, but
Yeah.
you don't know unless you at least like go there and talk to a person. So
Yeah. Definitely worth a conversation, seeing what they have and what they can help you with. So I do recommend. Actually, I did work in disability services for I think 2 years, and that was
that's
really
right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was a front desk person. Those times, I feel like it was so long ago. I'm like, am I getting older? It must be.
Yeah, we're old. Well, I'm old. I don't know if you're old, but I'm old.
Well, I mean, I'm a mom now, so I think maybe I am old. I don't know. I feel old.
No, it's so incredible to me that you're a mom now.
I it's mind blowing to me still too. It's been interesting to, I think, take what I grew up with and try to make it different, and to know that I don't want to have my kid raised in a house that I was raised in. And actually, with both my sisters and my older sister having kids, my younger sister, they're doing the exact same thing of trying to change the the chaos that we grew up in and wanting to, make sure that their kids have a different experience. So it's been really cool to see that all three of us are just very like driven on that of like we know what we grew up with and we know what we want our kids' lives to look like. So we've been very intentional about like being different than what we were raised with. So it's
Yeah.
been cool to see all of my sisters and where we're at now. Because I mean, when I was in high school, I would have never expected. I thought my life would have looked like that my entire life. I would have taken that and done the same thing to my family because I thought, that's what I grew up with. That's what I saw. That's what I know. But I think therapy has really helped me change that perspective and be able to like make progress of like changing my thought processes and behaviors towards like my own family. So
Mhm.
thank goodness I'm still in therapy for that.
Thank
I did
goodness.
not, yeah, I did not want the chaos that I grew up in.
Yeah, I think it's just profoundly powerful when we can find ways of breaking those intergenerational
Yeah,
cycles, right? Because unless we become aware of what's happening from generation to generation in our family, and then unless we find ways of healing from it and breaking those cycles, we repeat them, right? Um, Sometimes we even repeat them and need to forgive ourselves or other people, and that is the breaking of
yeah,
them. But it's like sometimes I think of it like we all are standing under the waterfall of the generation above us, and we have to like step out from under that, you know?
yeah.
Um, yeah. So, I mean, how have you been able to be intentional about that?
I think just recognizing, because my experience was I always saw my dad angry, and that was a response to when something went wrong, something wasn't your way, something was out of control, it was anger. And I think recognizing when that anger comes up for me, like, how do I react differently than the way that he reacted, which was usually aggression and verbal abuse, physical abuse. And so I think trying to pause when I feel anger coming up and like realizing, like, okay, you're starting to feel frustrated, you're starting to feel angry. What other options do you have right now instead of acting out and, you know, having those behaviors that your dad had? And I actually, it's even talking to my sisters, it's the same thing for them. It's the anger that they experience is what, it's what we saw. That's all we knew of how to respond. So I think, taking a break, walking outside, being in a room alone, especially having a 2-year-old. If he makes me frustrated, I separate. He goes to a room, I go to a room. We'll reconnect in like 5 minutes. And so I think just taking that time to like breathe and realize like let's not act out in frustrations. So I think just putting that forward of like, and even like having my husband hold me accountable of like, look, this is what I want to work on. And I don't want it to look like what it looked like growing up. I don't want it to be like me acting out in anger and, just like without irrationally just acting out. And so I think just having people hold me accountable too of like, I don't want that for myself. And so I'm working on like being different than what I was raised up in. And even like the way we talk to people, like being more positive. And my household growing up was always negative. Every comment in my house was negative. Nothing was ever positive. And so talking to my 2-year-old, we often just say positive affirmations all day long. I'm like, okay, say I am strong, say I am smart. And like, I didn't get that growing up. Like when we never were positive about ourselves. We never said like, I love my body. We never said that in our house. It was always negative. And so even with him, it's like, we are very intentional about like making him hear positivity versus negativity. And that's what I want, like, my family to be raised in. I don't want to be raised in negativity. I don't want my kid to have to feel the same things I felt growing up. So I think just making it different for him and hoping that, that change I can see when he's in high school, and hopefully he doesn't have to experience the same things I experienced, and that he has supportive parents, that if he does experience a mental illness, that we're there for him, and that, we're able to support him through that. But just right now, while he's young, changing the way that I am so that he can feel safe and feel like he's in a good house. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So breaking those patterns of anger, both for you and your sisters as well, sounds like you really partner with your husband and being able to create a different environment for your son, and also flipping the script from negativity to positivity as a mom. Side note, did you know that Snoop Dogg recorded affirmations?
I did not know that. That's actually really funny. Huh. I'm going to look it up now.
Yeah, they're really cute. You should look it up. Yeah, I heard about a kindergarten class that like listens to it every morning. So
that's really cute.
Check out Snoop Dogg affirmations.
I'll look into that.
You can listen to it with your son.
I know, because now that he's starting to talk, it's like, okay, now we can finally, well, he's more than talking. He's like full on saying essays. So now that he's doing that, it's kind of fun because we can have conversations together, which is so weird to me. I'm like, okay, we're having conversations. But
so mind blowing. Right?
Like this little human is just telling me about his day. Like, it's really weird.
Yeah, he's a little person, right?
But yeah, very intentional about the way that I'm raising him. So hopefully it goes good.
Yeah. And going good doesn't mean it goes perfectly. It just means that you're a human, and sometimes they say just a good enough parent, right? Someone who's there and wanting and caring and trying.
Yeah. I definitely have taken the road of, if I don't have control, it's okay. It's fine. Like, I will never have control with a 2-year-old, let alone with a newborn. That was very tough. So I don't have control right now, and that's okay. We're fine. Like, he's okay. He's safe. I'm safe. And I don't have to have control over everything. So it's been great to remind myself when you have a child.
Yeah. And that, hearing you talk yourself through that and that theme of control with parenting, it kind of brings a question up for me where you mentioned before that therapy has helped you with changing your thought patterns. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've learned to change your thought patterns?
I think specifically as an eating disorder program, we worked a lot on like rephrasing things and saying things in a more positive way, and like just being kinder to ourselves and just changing the way that we said things. And so, if it was, I hate the way I look, I hate my thighs, I hate my stomach, it was rewording it of like, I love my hair, I love my eyes, I love my personality, and like saying things that we did like about ourselves and trying to find things that were more positive than just being so negative about our bodies. And I think I've been able to really use that process of rephrasing things in everything. If something's out of my control, it's like, I may not have control over something right now, but I do have control over what my schedule is today, or I do have control over, what I'm wearing today. And so I think just trying to remind myself of a better way to say things without being really negative and hard on myself has really helped. I mean, since I've been in therapy, that's been like the most beneficial thing of rephrasing the negative thoughts in my head. Especially parenting, it's been like, you're not a good mom. But then it's like, I am a really great mom, and I do try really hard to, help my son have a different life. And so just trying to be more positive in those rephrasings and rewording the negative thoughts that do come into my head. And I mean, since doing that, it's been so much better than having all these negative things in my head just take up so much room and so much, like, it was always just constant anxiety over these negative statements that were in my head. And so having to be able to like restate them in a better way, in a better way that made me feel happier and not as anxious, I think has been really beneficial. I love rephrasing things. Even with like my husband, I'll be like, can we find a better way to say that? It's probably not the best thing to do, but I do it.
Well, I love that you have learned this mental health muscle, as I like to call it, of becoming aware of your thoughts and then being able to reframe them or rephrase
Yeah.
them. Um, to me, as a therapist, I always think I'm kind of biased, but I feel like that's one of the most powerful skills that anyone can learn. Um, and like with the anxiety program that we have, like that's 1/4 of the program. Um,
Yeah.
is I mean the fancy therapist word is cognitive restructuring, but it's like how do we become aware of our self-talk and how do we change that? And I think as I have conversations with people, especially people who haven't been in therapy before, I think people know this idea of self-talk.
Yeah.
They don't always know that we can find power in changing our thoughts. And there's kind of a skill that people have to practice. And I hear you are really, really practicing that
Yeah.
skill.
It just seems silly at first. You're like, how is this really going to help me? Like, I don't think in the beginning when I started doing it, I was like, this isn't work. Like, this is dumb. Like, I really did not feel like it was doing anything. But I mean, that was like the first couple months. Like, it's not going to feel like anything's changing until you start to realize, like, I actually have been way more positive about, the things around me and my life. And especially like what I grew up in, a lot of people are like, Emma, you should be really angry. You should be really, down and upset about what you grew up with. And it's like, I'm not. And I think a lot of that is just like being able to see it in a different light, to be able to reframe what I grew up in. Like, yeah, I grew up in a really chaotic household and I had a lot that went on that a lot of people shouldn't have to experience. But I also have a lot of positive things that have gone into my life. Like, and being able to see those things that, like, I graduated college, I have a child, I got married. And I think just looking at the positives that have come from the chaos that I grew up in. Like, I know what I don't want to have for a family. Like, I think that reframing type situation really was able, like, I didn't put myself in a box of like, poor me. Like, I'm not, I didn't say like, my life is terrible, I'm going to keep it this way the rest of my life. I wanted something different. I didn't want to be sad about my life my entire rest of my life. I still have however many years. Like, I'm, what, 26? Like, I don't want to be sad the rest of my life over this. I want to move on and move forward. And so I think that's been able to help me move on and move forward, even though it was difficult in the beginning to like train myself to rephrase. This is really helping me seeing my life in a different light than what other people can see it when I share my story. Because when I share my story, they're like horrified.
They're horrified. I always feel so hopeful
No,
because
I think
I'm a
people
therapist, but
really genuinely did not believe me until they heard my sisters talking about it. Because it doesn't
hmm,
seem real when like someone goes through so much. Like, I mean, I have gone through a lot, and I think people expect someone who has gone through that much to just not be so happy and to be so, you know, good in life. And I think I've had so many people who are like, who genuinely like, is she telling the truth? But I am telling the truth. Everyone in my family can back me up. Like, it's just what I've gone through. And so I think people, when I tell them, they're like, oh, like, you've gone through a lot. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely have gone through a lot. Which, by the way, for anyone listening, like there's a lot we haven't even talked
There's a
about.
lot.
But yeah. But I just so you know, like I have never questioned whether you were telling the
Thank
truth.
goodness.
Yeah, that question has never occurred to me.
I think it'd be so silly to like come up with something that is so horrible. And like, I would never want anyone to go through what I experienced. I mean, even now in my adulthood, like still navigating the things that pop up. Like, I would rather my life just be calm and not chaotic. I would have preferred that. And everyone who had that growing up that I knew was like, wow, I wish I had that. But I think I also would tell myself that everyone has something going on. No one has a perfect life. It's never going to look like a movie where, you have the perfect dynamic in your house. It wasn't, I thought that's how it was. But I think now, being older, there's always something going on in someone's life. It's not picture perfect for every single person in the world. And I think just reminding myself that too, of like, I'm not the only one going through something that feels stressful or chaotic or uncomfortable. Like a lot of people are experiencing similar things, even harder things. Like it, I think just reminding myself I wasn't alone in what I was going through really helped me to realize like, okay, I'm not like, this isn't like a just me and my sisters kind of thing. Like it's happening everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like what happened to you and your sisters is unique, and the kind of counterbalancing truth is that other people also go through their own difficulties that are
Yeah.
different. But we all always have stuff going on in our lives because we're human.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even though it feels like I don't have like parents, like there's other people out there who really don't have parents, and I have people who can fulfill that position for me. And so like even in feeling like, wow, I don't have parents and my friends have parents, like I was like, I don't have to have them like physically, mentally, emotionally be there for me when I have other support that can fulfill that position for me. So I always just felt like so jealous of everyone that had that. And I was like, it's that's just how it is for me right now. Like it's okay that I don't have that support and that I can gain that support in other ways. But growing up, I was like, man, I wish I had your parents. To every friend I had, I was like, wow, I wish I had that. But
Yeah.
now it's like I'm glad that I went through what I went through. Like I experienced really tough things to now put me in a position where I can get through really, really hard things and know that it will be okay. Because it took it took a lot to like go through really tough things, but now it's like I got through it, so I can get through anything.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, you have almost more of that resolve or more of that resilience compared to someone who hasn't gone
Yeah,
through hard things, right? Like you have more confidence that you can
sure.
get through hard
Yeah.
things.
Sometimes it feels like
Yeah.
you can't, but you can't.
It feels like you can't. Is that what you said?
Sometimes. I mean, like it's not every day that I wake up and I'm like, my life is beautiful. Like sometimes it hits me hard where I'm like, yeah, this is pretty tough. Like, it'd be nice to have what other people have, but I also am like, I have my own family now, and I that's who I'm taking care of is my family. So it's been nice to like be able to be like, okay, I don't feel the obligation to take care of everybody else anymore and to worry about everyone else's emotions and mine and like, feel this burden of taking care of everybody. I was like, yeah, I have my own family and that's who I need to worry about. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, for people in our community who are watching this, we've heard a little bit about your relationship with your dad. And so, I think it's pretty clear why you would feel like you don't have parents given that relationship with your dad. And you mentioned your mom earlier because she helped you get the treatment. Is there anything you feel comfortable sharing as to like why you might feel like you have less of a
Yeah.
relationship or less of a
Yeah.
mom? Yeah.
My mom, when she was 17, got into a car accident. And she had a traumatic brain injury from that. So growing up, she was there, but like wasn't emotionally there. Also, she was being abused. So to think in her position of like trying to survive and to just take care of three children and have a brain injury at the same time, we didn't really have a close relationship growing up. Like she was there, but we just didn't talk. We didn't really do much. And then I think 3 years ago, she got into another car accident a month after leaving my dad. And I think she was hit by a semi truck driver and she was in a coma, life flighted. She was a Jane Doe. We didn't know where she was. The police showed up to my dad's house and were like, hey, someone that you know is in the hospital. So from that, they weren't sure what her recovery looked like because she's older. It's her second brain injury. Truly, like, we don't know how she's still alive. Like, truly, to have two brain injuries is insane. Um,
Yeah.
but now she's fully independent in most cases in terms of like talking to people, relationships. It's like a teenager. So it's not the same as having a parent. It's very much parenting her. um, so the hardest thing was when I was having a child and I felt like I didn't really have that support that everyone else had when they have babies. I didn't have my mom's support just because she just was so caught up in like acting like a teenager, but that's just what happens when someone gets a brain injury. Their brain kind of reverts back to that. So now we experience like anger outbursts, difficulty remembering. The memory is really the most shocking thing that I really didn't experience. I did not expect to happen. Like, anger, like, what's the word? She's very impulsive. So it's not the same type of relationship. And I mean, it's different than growing up, because I think growing up, I still felt like she was capable of having a conversation, an emotional conversation, and now it's just like not the same. So, she lives with my sister. She's, like I said, independent in some ways, but just not capable of, I think, being that support. And yeah, my dad don't really talk as much. He lives with his parents in Ohio, so he's just never really been capable of having a conversation either, because he's so caught up in his world. So I really just, both parents are just not present to be a parent to me anymore. And it's actually, I say this to a lot of people, it's turned into us parenting our parents. So we're more their support than they're our support. So it's taken a lot to have to like grow up so fast, because even though I am an adult, I'm like 26. When this happened, I was 23. It just felt like it was like, whoa, I'm not ready to not have that support anymore. And not that there was all that support anyways, but it was still something, it was still being able to have a conversation if I was sad, or to call them if I needed just to like vent about something. And now it's not that the case at all. There's not a conversation that can be had with either of them. So we look for support in other ways. I have really supportive aunts and uncles, who are like my parents to me now. My sisters and I are so close now that we've gone through that together. But it's different when you don't have your parents' support anymore, and you feel like you're just kind of figuring it out on your own. It's been a lot of processing of like, this is what life looks like now. It's different, and it's not what I expected it to be, but this is what we're working with. So just trying to figure out what it looks like with a double brain injured mom and a dad who's emotionally unavailable. Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot even imagine. I mean, sometimes people, as we get older, we go through a period of life where we start to parent our parents and the tables turn that way. But that's, when people are in their 40s, their
Yeah.
50s and older. I mean, for you to go through that in your 20s, that's really unbelievable.
Yeah, and especially having like young kids, like they're going to have 4 grandkids. Both my sisters are pregnant, and right now they have 2. So it feels like it's like our kids aren't going to have the same like support that I had from my grandparents growing up. And I think accepting that too, it just looks different. It's not going to look the same as what I had growing up with my support from my grandparents. And it's okay. It's okay to look different from what I grew up with, but it just wasn't what I expected. I really did not. Obviously, you can't predict when a car accident's going to happen. You can't predict anything about that. But like, I never thought in a million years that someone who already had a traumatic brain injury would get another one. Like, I don't know how someone can be such a target on the road. We said, listen, you're not getting another car ever again. We're done. We're done driving. Not safe. You are clearly okay with driving. So it just looks different than what I think I thought my future would look like. And I think luckily with my husband being in the military and moving so much, we've been able to separate ourselves from like my parents in general, of like, not feeling obligated to see my dad when times come, like holidays, and like, oh, we live somewhere else and we can't travel. So I think that's kind of helped, just the separation of like being independent and not feeling like a need to go see people when, I'm okay at home. I have a family to take care of. So
Yeah.
Crazy.
So no, I was thinking my next question, but I was really struck by you saying like, I sometimes feel like I have no parents, because I know you physically have 2 parents, but emotionally you probably feel like you have no parents. And it was just reminding me of, teens and college students that I've talked to who feel like they have no parents. or they literally don't have their biological parents. And so I was wondering like how you kind of fill the void. Like you mentioned aunts and
Yeah.
uncles. Has that been kind of the primary way of feeling like, I don't know if you'd say like that parental energy,
Yeah.
like, some mother, like having motherly figures or fatherly
Yeah.
figures in your life? Has it mostly been aunts and uncles? Have there been other people who kind of fill in
Um,
those spaces?
Kind of. It's actually interesting. My mom has three sisters, and like I have two sisters, so all three of them have really taken each one of us in. So there's an aunt that took my older sister in, there's an aunt that took my younger sister in, and then there's an aunt who's kind of taken me in. So it kind of feels that way of like fulfilling that for us. And the one who's taken me in lives closer to me, so we see them very often. And I think just being able to look to them when I need support. I don't think it will ever be 100% the same, obviously, because that's not my parents. And I still get sad sometimes where when I go there and I see how they are towards their children, it's like, wow, I wish I could have that. I wish, my grandkids got what their grandkids are going to get. And luckily, my aunt and uncle are the sweetest people in the world. And they're like, Emma, like, you are our child. Like, your child is our grandchild. Like, they don't make it feel that way, but it just, I don't think it'll ever 100% feel like, you know, they're my parents. Like they're not, they're my aunt and uncle. But yeah, and my grandparents have kind of fulfilled that position a little bit. But they're so far, they're in California, so don't see them or talk to them as often as I'd hope to. But I think, and like, I think in times, where you don't have parents, people look for answers of like, oh, well, my dad could be that person for you, or, it just, and it's not like, that's not what I need. You're missing what you want. Like, you want your parents, you want, what And so that type of support of like, oh, well, this person can be that. And it's like, but if, it's not the same. It's not the same as wanting the person that I knew and I grew up with. It's just finding a way to find support that I want. And if I want like a father figure support, then like that's just a person I'm going to go to for it. But it will never 100% be like fulfilling the position that my parents had. Um, I think that's just like the reality of like not having parents that are there for you. It's just, I have to accept that like the support just looks different. It's not going to be the same as what I know. And there's still days where it's extremely sad that I can't just like call my mom and be like, hey, can I just have a conversation with you? Like, it's just never going to be that way. But I think just knowing that like there's people that I can call who can fulfill that to an extent, and it won't look the same, but it will help me fulfill the need that I have to talk to someone who can provide support. So it just, knowing it's not going to look the same is the biggest thing, because I think I expected it to be the same. Of like, well, I can't just be the same thing as what my parents were, but it's not going to be the same. So
Yeah. So the reality is it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be what other people have with their
yeah,
parents. And deep down, that's what you really want, right?
yeah,
There's no replacing that, there's no supplementing that. And at the same time, it does sound like you have a lot of love in your life from other
tons.
places,
Yeah,
especially your aunt and uncle. Yeah.
yeah. I think just looking to them for that love and support, and especially for like my child, of like they give him so much love. And I'm not that my parents don't. My parents do. My parents love my child. It just looks different. And being
Yeah.
okay with like it looking different. It's not gonna look how I expected it to look when I was in middle high school, thinking, okay, how are my parents gonna be as grandparents? It's not. It's different, and being okay with the difference than I expected. Like it's okay. It's not what I thought I was gonna have for my future.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be really painful, right? Like we
Yeah,
can feel really sad, really disappointed when we have an image in mind. We have a vision of what our parents might be like as grandparents or dream of having kids someday.
yeah,
And then it's not what we thought. And I don't know, I guess it just reminds me of the idea of like a kid being surrounded by a village, right? And like, just seems like that village can look
yeah.
different
And I
for
think
every
like
kid.
the process of grieving, even though my parents are still here, was
Mm.
so different, because it was like I'm grieving something that I lost like emotionally, but they're still physically available. It's just a different type of grieving. And especially when my mom's accident happened, it was like I'm grieving the mom that I used to have, and it's not what it is now. And trying to look at grief in terms of like, okay, that is like the past mom, and now it looks different in terms of like what I have available to me now. But that grieving process was really difficult. Of like, I think I still go through like the denial phase of like, okay, maybe she'll get better. Maybe her brain will get better and she'll be more available. But in reality, it's the opposite. It's slowly getting worse. And so I think just going through those stages of like acceptance and denial, and like just seeing myself in that, even though she's very much alive and here, it's just a different person than I knew. And it's like you have to like relearn this new person that like you never knew before. It's like newly introducing yourself of like, okay, who is this person and what are they capable of, and conversation wise, and it's just different. It's not what I thought my future was gonna look like.
My goodness. Yeah. I mean, what a strange, difficult grief process we go through when we have a loved one who has some sort of organic brain issue. And for some people, it's a brain injury, like your mom, 2 brain injuries, which is unthinkable. I mean, 1 brain injury is unthinkable to me. Your mom has 2, which is beyond unthinkable. But sometimes people have other organic brain issues, or they have Alzheimer's or a brain tumor, and it just changes who the person is. And it's very strange to be grieving who that person was while they're still alive.
Yeah, it's so strange because should I be grieving when she's still here? And it's like, I didn't lose her. She's still alive. She's still very capable of being a grandma, but like it just like the person I used to know is not there anymore. It's very different. It's not what I knew growing up. It's a very different picture of what she is now. So it's definitely difficult to see what she was and what she is now. But
Well, absolutely. But I think part of that is also the grief process, right? Like you mentioned, denial.
Yep.
And what are the ones? Denial, bargaining, anger.
Acceptance. I've been through it all. I've been through all the phases multiple times. I just keep going down the list.
That's how it's supposed to work. They're not linear. We just circle back through them, in different random ways at times we don't want. So
all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm back at the anger phase. Like it just happens. It's like it's not linear at all. The grieving process. I mean, it's 3 years later, and I still think I'm very much in a place of like, I wish it wasn't like this. I wish it was different. But I try to think of it in positive terms of like she's still here and she's still able to see her grandchild and visit us, and she's still here even though it looks different. She could have not been here, and that would have been tragic. But I still have
that's true.
A physical mom, just in a different way. It's just not the same. But.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely admire how you've been able to come to terms with that, because it just sounds really, really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? You think your life is finally slowing down, and then it's just another chaotic thing happens, and you just kind of go with the flow, and this is it. This is my life. It's okay. Like, you just kind of figure it out as it goes. And like I said, I don't have control over anything else outside of my life except for what I can do, what I physically, I have control for myself, and that's all I have control over. Anything else outside of my control, and that's okay.
Yeah, very realistic, very accepting as well.
I've had to be realistic because I would love to control everything in the world, but that's not realistic.
Yeah, I also cannot control everything in the world. That might come as a shock to you, but
bummer. I really need to find someone that can, because
when you find it, please let me know. Please send me an email, and I'll share it with this community as well. So I did want to just ask about something you mentioned quite a while ago in the conversation, but some of the people in our community struggle with panic attacks. And back when I knew you as an undergraduate student, that was a major theme of what you were going through. And you also mentioned Milo. So Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with panic attacks?
Yeah, I got diagnosed with panic disorder when I was in high school. I didn't know what a panic attack was at the time, but I would sit in my tennis coach's room and I would be in the corner and I would just like shake and have hyperventilate and like not be able, like the world was spinning, I was sweating. Um, I did not know what I was going through. Actually, I don't think a psychiatrist even told me I was diagnosed with panic disorder until he gave me like a referral paper for disability services and it said panic disorder. And I was like, oh, wow, that makes sense. I would have loved to know that's what I was diagnosed with. Um, that kind of went into college too. It also was around crowds when there was a lot of people. I felt really overwhelmed. So going into any type of like chapel, any event where there was a lot of students was really, really overstimulating, and I would have a panic attack. Um, I was on so many medications. I was like a robot. And I think I got to a point where I felt like medicine just wasn't working for me anymore. It had been like 9 years on like 8 or 9 medicines. And my psychiatrist wasn't reducing them, even though I felt like I was getting better. Like I just could not be on any more medicines. I was like so done. Um, so I was like, let's try something different. So I asked my psychiatrist to write a referral for an emotional support animal for college because I think we needed a referral in order to have him there. And magically, he didn't want to at first. But I was like, let's just try it. I really think it could be beneficial. So my sophomore year, I had a kitten, and his name is Milo. I don't know if it's because I had him from the time he was a kid. He was very socially aware of everything, every emotion. If I would sniffle, he would think I was crying, so he'd come over and sit on my chest. If I was in the fetal position from like hyperventilating, he'd come over and like nudge me. Um, he was very aware of emotions. I don't understand how a cat can be so aware of emotions, and people probably think I'm crazy because people hate cats sometimes. But like he was just a very smart cat, and I think out of everything that helped me, it was having a cat. He was just like the person that was there for me when I needed something. So he was there with me for college for 3 years. He really, really helped me. And it was actually interesting when I moved back home when college was done. My dad, he became my dad's best friend. When my dad would cry, he would sit on my dad's chest. He would do the exact same thing that he did to me to my dad. It was mind blowing. I don't understand. He just knew I was good. He was like, I gotta go take care of someone else now.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's still with my dad. Um, I think that's actually been the one thing that has really helped my dad because I mean he's also grieving his wife leaving him, but then also grieving. He doesn't really know the extent my mom's brain injury is, and so like I can't imagine like living with someone, being married to them for a long time, and then not being able to talk to them. And I'm sure he's going through his own process of grief, and so I think having that cat has really been beneficial to him. I don't know. He's a miracle cat. It was something. He's something special. So he's doing his job with my dad now. But yeah, panic attacks were really severe for me. It was like a full it, shaking, hyperventilating. Like I said, it was a full body thing that would take like 10, 15 minutes to come down from. I was prescribed Xanax, which was extremely helpful because it just literally snaps you out of it like so fast. But then when you take it, you feel like debilitated after. Like I felt like I was so sleepy and just wanted to go to bed when I would take the medicine. So I really tried to avoid taking it as much as possible. But in severe cases, I absolutely took it to help me manage what I was going through. Um, but I think finding ways to like when I felt symptoms of panic coming on, like, okay, let's distract, let's do things to try to keep my mind off of what I'm feeling. Let's leave the environment that I'm feeling not safe in. Um, I think working through that through therapy and at Vanguard was really beneficial because I learned coping tools to help me get through the panic attacks. Because, I mean, in the beginning, I didn't know what I was going through. I had no clue what a panic attack was. I didn't know what I was experiencing. But I think learning what that was, what it looked like for me, what, the first signs and symptoms were. And even now to this day, like the second I zone out, I'm like, all right, like, let's go find something to keep myself busy because that's my first sign of like a panic attack. I think just learning about myself and about what it looks like for me. And I mean, it looks different for everybody, but that was really beneficial for me to minimize the amount of panic attacks that I had and like the full blown ones where it was like I was out for the rest of the day type of thing. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so learning, like going through that process of learning about yourself and what panic looks like for you, how to catch it early in the process, what the signs and symptoms are. Like our fancy therapist word for that is psychoeducation, which it always sounds like a boring word. Like I feel like I can't find a way to convey to people that it's really powerful. But what you just said is that, right? Like learning your triggers for panic, learning what panic feels like for you, how to catch it early on. All of that psychoeducation really important for you in overcoming it. You mentioned also learning coping tools that helped you. Do you remember anything specific as a coping tool that helped you?
I know like the breathing exercises were really helpful. Like, or even like the grounding was also really beneficial. Like looking around the room and doing like the five senses thing, or like what's two things I can smell, what's three things I can touch, what's four things I can hear. I think that was also super helpful. A lot of times I would just look at the ceiling and count ceiling tiles because I think it was mostly about getting my mind off of the panic that I was feeling. So any type of breathing, and I ended up telling one friend, like, here's the breathing exercises. And in the moment, I felt like I couldn't do it by myself most of the time because I was so filled with panic. So she would actually like walk me through those breathing exercises of like, let's breathe in for 7, or I actually don't, it was box breathing, but I don't remember the actual seconds. That's a long time ago. But I think just even having people around me be aware of like what's helpful for me and like if they can help me through it, that was great. Obviously, I didn't want to rely on anybody for that, but having friends know what it looks like and how to help. And I think those exercises of just like getting my mind out of that was really helpful. But definitely grounding. Grounding was the biggest thing that I would do.
Okay. All right. So breathing and grounding. And I also hear that you took a really smart approach of kind of like teaching your people what you needed in those moments of panic, and then they knew how to help you, because otherwise people really don't know how to help us. We tell them ahead of time.
I had a best friend in college. Actually, I still talk to her this day, and she actually would keep my Xanax in her backpack because I was with her pretty much all the time. I mean, I would have someone in my room just in case I wasn't around her, but she would literally keep it with her. And if there was a time I needed it, she would just have it, which was so beneficial for me because I trusted her and I knew that she was just looking out for me and wanted the best for me. And I mean, there was before she had it, I think in her backpack, she literally would run across the campus to get it for me. So I think just having that person to be there for me, and I mean, it wasn't like I immediately just found the person the first day I walked on the campus. It took a little while to build up to that. But from being able to be open and vulnerable with her, like she was able to be supportive for me when I needed it. But still to this day, we just went to Disney World together like 2 months ago. We still talk. She actually was at Vanguard now, which is really funny. I know she loves it there. She's actually, I think she's an RD. Yeah, or director, resident director. So she lives there, actually. She does all things at Vanguard. But I think through educating her, which even, it's funny because I don't think she even knew like what panic attacks were. She didn't have any history of mental illness, didn't have any experience with it. And so she just like jumped right in, was like, I'm willing to be that support for you. So I really did try to find someone that would be available when I needed it and that I could rely on, like if I was experiencing something that was extremely scary, because panic attacks are terrifying.
Absolutely. I would not wish them on my worst enemies.
No, absolutely not.
Did your panic attacks continue like after college up until now?
They're sparse. They're not as frequent as they used to be. And really it takes a lot for me to get to that point. I don't really know the last time I had one. Maybe when I was postpartum. Probably that was the last time I had it. But yeah, they're really few and far between now. Before, it was so frequent. It was like every other day, once a week type of situation in college. They minimized as the years went on through college. So like my senior year, it wasn't that frequent. But my freshman, sophomore year, it was extremely frequent. But now, yeah, it's really not like that. I try to prevent them from happening, like in terms of like just processing things better and not feeling as panicky. I really avoid crowded situations in general. Like I don't put myself in that place where I know that it's going to cause me panic. Um, I don't know the last time I was in a crowded space, honestly, but it's a lot better than what it used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, the fact that it's gotten better over time, I mean, I feel like that's such a
Yeah,
realistic hope for people who might be, if they're still in that place of having a panic attack every other day or every week, people need to hear that like this can become less frequent, it becomes less intense.
yeah, yeah,
All right, I have two final questions for you.
yeah.
Um, and for either question, if you don't want to answer it, just say pass, and we'll edit it out. Okay. Um, so one question, I was just thinking about how you're now a mom and you've given birth to this beautiful boy with bright blue eyes, and it was reminding me of some of my people that I talk to in therapy, out of therapy, online in this community who are young women, and some of them have a dream in their heart to be a mom someday. But when they've struggled with something like an eating disorder or let's say a medical issue, they're questioning whether that would be possible for them. Um, and I don't know. I don't even know what the question is, but I'm just wondering what you might say to them if they're just questioning if it's even possible to dream about that.
Yeah. I that was the biggest fear I had before getting pregnant. I was like, I don't want to gain that much weight when I have a child. That seems really not within my realm of wanting to do. Um, I think it was knowing like what like reframing my idea, like my mindset too was the biggest thing. But I think also talking to therapists, but within talking to therapists, finding ways to like avoid any talk of weight. When I would go to a doctor's appointment, I didn't know how much weight I was gaining. I would step on the scale backwards every single time.
Okay.
And they were aware of that was my boundary. And we're not going to talk about how much weight I'm gaining. And because, I think especially in pregnancy, it's like, how much weight did you gain? And like, I don't know why that has to be a conversation ever. Like,
It's a
as long
big
as my
thing.
child is growing, my child was
Yeah.
9 pounds when he was born. So I'm sure I gained a plenty amount of weight. I couldn't tell you the number to this day. When I got to the hospital to give birth, they're like, how much do you weigh? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, huh? How do you not know? And I was like, I don't know. They're like, don't you go to your appointments? I was like, yeah, I don't know. And I was like, it's just not something I talk about and I'm comfortable talking about. And people were really respectful about that. And so I think just being able to be open with the doctors and staff about what your boundaries are in terms of like conversations like that, I think that made me more comfortable with it because I don't think I would have even like I talking to the doctor about that. It just seems like a little dramatic to like go in and be like, I don't want to talk about it. But they were really, really full of my wishes, and I think protected me from potential like feelings of like, oh, I'm gaining too much weight. I need to eat less. And on top of that, even reminding myself like I'm growing a child who needs nutrients to also survive. And in order for him to grow more, I need to feed my body food. Because it was extremely hard to see my body look different and to see, it grow so much. And I was like, what in the heck? Like, this is not what I ever thought would happen. Like, I thought, I'd look cute and tiny and like every other pregnant lady, but I'm 5'10", I'm a really tall person. And so I look different than every pregnant person looks different. It's not going to look the same, and every pregnant person gains a different amount of weight, and that's okay. Um, but I think even like after like postpartum, like reminding family members of like we're not going to talk about weight loss and what that looks like for me. Of like, how much weight did you lose, and like, it just I think maintaining those boundaries with everyone around me is really what helped. And even to this day, like there's no way I'm back to what my postpartum weight, I mean, my prepartum weight was, but like, it's okay. I'm still breastfeeding my child. Like, he still needs nutrients. And so that's what I need to do for now. And it's okay. So I think just like it looks different when you're trying to take care of a different life. It's it's not my life that I'm trying to take care of right now. It's, you know, it's a child's life. It's an infant's life. It's like a fetus life, you know, and that's how they get experiences. I have to feed myself. So it was extremely scary to be like, okay, I guess I'm gonna have a child too because I'm gonna gain weight, and that it wasn't about me. It was about a child, and so I think that's what made me feel more comfortable. Like, you know, being pregnant, it was like, well, my child needs this right now, and so I'm gonna do what I need to do to keep my child alive. Because like he doesn't deserve to
Yeah.
have my eating disorder. Like, I mean, that's, you know, he's come into this life without any problems. Let's keep it that way for as long as possible. So I was just trying to reframe everything about the process was so 9 months of just being like, I'm so over this. I want to lose weight. But even now it's like I'm so grateful for like a healthy baby, you know, like he's a chunky one. And that was because I was able to keep my body healthy. So yeah.
Yeah, you're literally a source of life.
Which is crazy to even think that's a thing. And I was like, wow, I'm literally keeping this kid alive right now. Yeah. And then even in the beginning, in the newborn days, like he needed me to stay alive too. Like I had what he needed, and I was the primary person that he needed. So, like, obviously now he can eat food and he's very capable of that, but I'm still his comfort, which is a problem. But yeah, it's just, you know, his needs are more important right now than my body gaining weight. Like, that's okay to gain weight to feed someone. It's okay to gain weight to feed yourself. Like, just reminding myself of that when I really did not want to gain weight.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I know that was like a little bit of a more vulnerable question, but I really appreciate you sharing with us and
Yeah.
hear how you're growing even now through that process with him. And I think that's one of the strange, wonderful things about having a child is that like they actually grow us as well in the ways that we need. It
Yeah.
can be healing in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Okay, one last question to wrap up our conversation. What's something you wish you knew when you were younger?
I think the biggest thing is that I wasn't alone. I felt extremely alone growing up. I felt like I was the only one going through what I was going through, that everyone else around me had perfect, beautiful lives, you know, that my sisters didn't have the same problems as me, even though we were in the same house. Like, I think I felt so alone in my problems, and that, you know, no one knew what I was going through. No one lived what I was going through. And I think in that feeling alone, I started to like feel so isolated. And I think I even isolated myself from others because I was like, they're never going to get it. Like, no one's ever going to understand that, like, this is my life and this is, you know, it's chaotic. And so I think the biggest thing is just that there was so much support out there for me. And really, it just took finding people to be there and be that support. Um, I, it, I mean, it took a while for me to find the support that I needed in terms of like therapy and finding the right therapist, because that is a hard process in of itself. But I think just finding people in general to support you, and, you know, being able to like talk about it now, and like being able to share like what I did experience when I felt so alone, and that like no one was going through what I was going through. I really think I just wish like you'll do it and it'll be okay, and that, you know, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and you just have to keep pushing and keep trying to make yourself better. And I didn't want to feel sad the rest of my life. I wanted to feel the feeling of happiness, and I wanted to feel joy. And I think just reminding myself like this is for an end goal of feeling happiness, and I want to feel that again. Like, I want to feel happiness. I want to be happy. I want to be like everyone else around me who shows that they're happy. They may not be inside and you may not know it. I think I wanted that for myself. And so I think just reminding myself like it's there. It'll be there. Just, you know, keep keep going. It'll be okay in the end.
Yeah. Okay. So you needed to know you're not alone. You will get through this. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Just keep going. It'll be okay. And
Yeah.
you'll get through this in the end.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, thank you for being with us and sharing your story, Emma, because in you sharing your story, ironically, you are giving that gift to younger people who are watching, whether they're in middle school or high school or college, like they're going to know they're not alone by hearing you share that. So
Yeah,
thank you so
I
much.
hope they know. I hope everyone feels more supported.